The tranquility of my backyard, a sanctuary of towering oak trees, chirping birds, and the occasional squirrel darting across the lawn, was shattered one crisp autumn morning. Taped to my mailbox was a neon green flyer, its bold letters screaming at me like a siren. Attention residents. New HOA regulation. Prohibition of treehouses. I snatched the flyer, my heart pounding. Treehouses banned? It was absurd. My oak tree had been a fixture in the neighborhood for decades, its branches stretching proudly toward the sky. It wasn't just a tree, it was a symbol of childhood wonder, a relic of simpler times. And now, the HOA, under the iron fist of its newly appointed president, Karen, yes, that Karen, had decided that treehouses were unsightly and disruptive to neighborhood harmony. I scoffed. Neighborhood harmony? My treehouse had been a gathering spot for kids and adults alike. It was where birthday parties were celebrated, where lemonade was sipped, and where stories were shared under the stars. What was disruptive about that? But the fine print was even more infuriating. The new regulation wasn't just about preventing new treehouses. It demanded the removal of existing ones within 30 days. Failure to comply would result in daily fines and, eventually, legal action. I crumpled the flyer in my hand, my anger simmering. This wasn't about harmony, it was about control. Karen's vision of suburban perfection didn't include anything that didn't fit her cookie-cutter aesthetic. And my treehouse, with its rustic charm and whimsical design, was a direct affront to her authority. As I stared at the oak tree, a slow smile spread across my face. If Karen wanted my treehouse gone, fine. But I wasn't going down without a fight. The next morning, armed with a sketchpad and a devilish grin, I set about making my vision a reality. First, I needed a construction crew. I found a local company, Bob's Treehouse Builders, known for their creativity and willingness to tackle unconventional projects. I met with Bob himself, a burly man with a perpetually amused expression. "So, you want a treehouse?" Bob asked, scratching his head. "A big one." "Bigger," I replied. "Think fortress. Think untouchable." Bob's grin widened. "I like your style," he chuckled. "When do we start?" The construction began the following week. The sound of hammers and saws echoed through the neighborhood as Bob and his team transformed my oak tree into a towering masterpiece. My neighbors watched with a mixture of curiosity and concern. Karen, who occasionally drove by in her pristine white SUV, seemed perplexed. "What's he doing now?" I overheard her mutter to a passenger. "Some kind of tree renovation." "Looks like he's going for a bird sanctuary," the passenger replied with a hint of sarcasm. "A very large bird sanctuary." Karen sniffed. "It's unsightly. It's disruptive." I just smiled and waved, letting them believe it was just an eccentric landscaping project. They had no idea what was coming. The treehouse grew taller and grander, its wooden beams stretching toward the sky like a fortress. It was truly a sight to behold, a towering structure that hinted at the glorious pettiness to come. And then, the final touch, a zip line that stretched from the treehouse to the far end of my property. When Karen and the HOA realized my true intentions, they collectively lost their minds. "A zip line!" Karen shrieked, her voice echoing across the neighborhood. "This is preposterous. This is unsightly." "Unsightly," I echoed, feigning confusion. "I think it's quite harmonious, don't you agree? It really ties the whole yard together." Karen sputtered, her face turning an alarming shade of purple. "This is a clear violation of something. We'll find a rule. We'll find a dozen rules." "Good luck with that, Karen," I said, a mischievous glint in my eye. "Because as far as I'm concerned, this is just a very large, very decorative tree feature." The treehouse wasn't just a structure, it was a carefully curated ecosystem of pettiness. I stocked it with bird feeders, wind chimes, and even a small telescope for stargazing. The zipline, of course, was the piece de resistance, a ridiculously oversized, utterly absurd addition that drove Karen absolutely bonkers. The HOA, predictably, was apoplectic. They descended upon my property like a swarm of angry bees, their faces contorted with rage. "This is insane!" Karen shrieked, pointing at the treehouse with a trembling finger. "You can't just build a treehouse. It's a safety hazard. It's not in the community spirit." "Safety hazard," I echoed, feigning concern. "Nonsense, Karen. It's perfectly safe. See." I gestured toward a sign I'd erected near the zipline. "Caution, fun ahead. Do not feed the squirrels." Karen sputtered. "Squirrels? What about raccoons?" "Raccoons?" I raised an eyebrow. "Karen, you wound me. I would never introduce such disruptive creatures into our harmonious community. Not yet, anyway." The HOA's frantic attempts to find a loophole were met with the cold, hard reality of my meticulous planning. My treehouse technically complied with every single HOA landscaping rule. I cited obscure bylaws about natural structures, wildlife preservation, and even historical significance. I even presented a report from a certified arborist, a friend of mine with a knack for creative interpretations, who declared the treehouse a vital part of the local ecosystem. Karen and the HOA board members stared at the documents, their faces a mixture of confusion and disbelief. They were trapped in their own bureaucratic web, tangled in the very rules they so gleefully wielded against others. But I wasn't content with merely outsmarting them. I wanted to escalate the pettiness to truly legendary levels. Enter the "Caution, Live Raccoons" signs. I strategically placed these ominous warnings around the treehouse, complete with cartoonish raccoon illustrations and bold red lettering. The signs, of course, were entirely fabricated. At this point, the treehouse was populated only by harmless birds and the occasional squirrel. But the HOA, particularly Karen, was already primed for paranoia. "Raccoons!" I overheard Karen shriek to a fellow HOA member during her usual drive-by surveillance. "He's put raccoons in the treehouse. That's it. This has gone too far." Karen, driven by her suspicion and a burning desire to catch me in the act, decided to take matters into her own hands. She arrived at my property clad in her usual power suit, which seemed a bit overdressed for treehouse inspection, but who was I to judge? Determined to inspect the treehouse herself, she cautiously approached the base of the oak tree. I watched from my window, a mug of hot chocolate in hand, because what's a bit of petty revenge without a cozy beverage? As Karen peered up at the treehouse, searching for any sign of raccoon mischief, the zip-line, which I may or may not have subtly loosened earlier, gave way with a dramatic creak. Karen, caught off guard, yelped and tumbled into a pile of leaves. The security camera, of course, captured the entire spectacle in glorious high definition. It was a moment destined for viral infamy. The treehouse rebellion wasn't just a victory. It was a testament to the power of creativity, determination, and a healthy dose of pettiness. Karen and the HOA, defeated and humiliated, retreated to their pristine rule-laden headquarters, their powerlessness deliciously evident. As for me, I sat in my treehouse, sipping lemonade and watching the sunset, a mischievous grin on my face. Karen may have banned treehouses, but she couldn't ban my spirit. Subscribe to my channel for more stories of rebellion, creativity, and the art of outsmarting the system.